Hello and welcome to my Retro Media Room. Today I want to showcase 5 classic games that are still stuck on the PlayStation 1. These are games I would love to see have some sort of remaster or re-release like they've been doing with all these PlayStation 1 classic games on PlayStation 5, which has been really cool with the recent additions of Twisted Metal 3 and 4. Because the only way you're playing these now is if you happen to already own them digitally on PS3 where applicable, or if you have the disc. Now, when it comes to emulation, I'm not really talking about that. That's a whole other subject matter. I'm talking about playing these natively on actual hardware. With that being said, let's get to our first title. And the first title on our list is going to be Medal of Honor, released for the PlayStation 1 in 1999. While Medal of Honor may not be the very first World War II first-person shooter, you have games like Wolfenstein that have already been doing that, but this is clearly the first one that inspired the likes of Call of Duty and many more imitators to come after it. Medal of Honor was a pioneer for its day. Now, it's no coincidence that this shares quite a bit of DNA with Saving Private Ryan, and the reason for that is because Steven Spielberg was behind the entire project. This was developed by DreamWorks Interactive, which of course all of DreamWorks was co-founded by Steven Spielberg. One day, he was watching his son Max playing video games, and he noticed he was playing GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64, and he thought it was really immersive with the first-person perspective, and then he thought, man, wouldn't that be interesting if we were able to do a gritty World War II experience from the first person in gaming? So Spielberg led the way of this game being developed, and he was a consultant throughout the whole process. He really wanted it to match some of the grit and detail in Saving Private Ryan, so you could say that Steven Spielberg is the grandfather of modern World War II first-person shooters. Now, obviously, the PlayStation 1 had some limitations when it came to graphics, even though they were quite good at the time, but the sound design holds up in 2025. The sound design is excellent in this game. Great score and ambience, the gun sound effects, the voices. It's dripping with atmosphere. It's pretty incredible, actually. Now, playing this on my PlayStation 3 with dual analog, it actually feels pretty good with the controls. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's really not bad at all. And its manual aiming is quite a bit like GoldenEye. It's decent, but it is of the time, but it really isn't that big of a deal. You get used to it pretty quickly. But like GoldenEye, it also has a setting to give you auto aim, so it's pretty easy to engage targets. And quite a bit of fun, too. I really enjoyed this game. Now, I did run into a couple of minor bugs while playing Medal of Honor on my PS3, and it might be just some backwards compatibility bugs. Let me know if you ever experienced these on PS1 or PS2. I don't remember ever seeing that on those consoles. At one point, I'm running along a walkway and the rest of the level stopped loading in, so you couldn't see anything. It was just a black screen in the background, so I had to restart the map in order to progress. And there's also a sound glitch where it starts off, you have the music and the ambience, and then kind of a little pop sound goes off and it just mutes itself. You still have gunshots and voice acting and everything, but the ambience and music is gone, which is really bad. There might be solutions to this, things you do or don't do when the level first starts to set that off, but it's not all the time, but it does happen rather frequently, and you have to kind of toy with it till it doesn't do it. Not the end of the world, it's not game breaking or anything, but it is a bit of a nuisance. Naturally, throughout the campaign, you have quite the plethora of authentic World War II weapons to use that look rather nice for the time and sound fantastic with the excellent sound design. I gotta admit though, throwing grenades is pretty weird in this, so I kind of avoid it, and also the enemy has a tendency to pick them up and throw them back at you, so it's kind of more trouble than it's worth a lot of the time. While all the guns are rather solid, the shotgun in particular is quite fun. It's also quite satisfying when you're infiltrating an area in a fake uniform and you pop somebody's head with the silenced pistol. It's really cool. And that's another standout element of the game at the time, when you're infiltrating an area and they do the classic,
"May I see your papers, please?"
You don't have the proper identification.
You actually go around upgrading your paperwork in order to move from one area to the next and staying undercover. It was really cool at the time. And I'm sure the sequel, Underground, expands on that. That'll be another game for the channel. Now, obviously, Medal of Honor Frontline was the Medal of Honor that really sent World War II first-person shooters into the stratosphere with the mainstream, to the point where it almost became somewhat oversaturated in the market with World War II games. Which so happens I covered the PlayStation 3 remastered of it, although flawed, it was quite an interesting game, so if you want to see that, check out the link in the description. This is where it all truly started. Kind of like how Castle Wolfenstein is the grandfather of first-person shooters, and this is the grandfather of modern World War II first-person shooters that brought the likes of Saving Private Ryan to gaming. It's quite an interesting gem, and it's not available to download on the PlayStation 3 store. It just isn't available to purchase, even though it's listed. It's rather cheap to find physically, actually. It's worth picking up if you want a little bit of a piece of history to see where a lot of this stuff stems from, and especially if you're a Steven Spielberg and World War II fan. So Medal of Honor to PlayStation 1, you should absolutely check it out, and like I said, it's pretty cheap to pick up. Up next, we have Castlevania Chronicles, released for the PlayStation 1 in 2001. So back in Japan in 1993, they remade the original 1986 Castlevania on the X68000 Japanese home computer. And this version of Castlevania was only in Japan until they re-released it here on the PlayStation 1 through Castlevania Chronicles, so it's kind of a remake of a remake, or rather a rearrangement. So you were able to play the original version of the game, which is a really tough way to play it. It's a very challenging and hardcore game. Then you have the arranged version, which makes the game quite a bit easier to play for most players, so overall it's more enjoyable. It does have different colors in the graphics, which I think overall look better. There's different music, which, give or take your taste, may or may not be better to the original. I think the original is better, but like I said, it kind of comes down to preference. The controls are substantially improved. You don't take as much damage. You're able to add more continues, things like that. So overall, I think it's a better, more enjoyable experience for the majority of players because it's not as punishing. But I do appreciate the fact that the original is kept intact on this version for North American players to be able to experience it the first time. And really, if you want to challenge yourself, oh, you're going to find a challenge here. It's very cool. But like I said, the arranged version is more playable. As one of the bonus items in the game, there's a really cool interview with Koji Igarashi, who's the producer of the game, as well as a member of the original team that developed Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I really liked a lot of his answers to the questions in the interview. It really gave you some insight to his mindset and approach to the game, as well as some mentalities I think are lacking in the modern era of gaming development. So it's really worth watching. You're able to watch it right away in the extras. Simply put, if you're a big fan of the original Castlevania and you love old school Castlevania, you're going to be right at home here. Now, is the 93 remake better than the original? Not necessarily. I kind of like the original better, but this one is updated. It does look prettier technically, but honestly, it's a little bit broken at times and how difficult it can be. I'm pretty sure it's more difficult than the original was because I've gotten further than the original with less problems. That's why I like the arranged version. Like I said before, it's a lot easier to play, a lot more enjoyable. So I was fortunate enough that I bought a brand new copy of this game years ago for $50, and I've got a PlayStation 3 digital copy of it before it was delisted. Nowadays it's rather expensive. It's around $150 for a complete copy. So hopefully this gets some sort of re-release on PlayStation 5 the way they've been releasing classics lately. That would be really cool for Castlevania fans. So at the very least, that's why I wanted to be able to show this because it is quite the rare game nowadays, but it's a very cool game, especially as a Castlevania fan and a collector. And what I've always loved about Castlevania, how it's right along with Universal monsters, vampires, Halloween, ghouls and ghosts and goblins. It's just awesome. I've always loved the themes of Castlevania. That's why it's endured over so many years. So Castlevania Chronicles, hopefully you get to check it out. I recommend the game, and I especially hope they bring it back through PlayStation 1 Classics on PlayStation 5. And the next title is going to be Breath of Fire 3, released for the PlayStation 1 in 1998. So this was actually my first entry into a Breath of Fire game. I've collected all of them over the years. I never got around to them. So sitting down and playing this for the first time, I was really enjoying myself. Colorful graphics, really well animated sprites, a fun combat system, and this is not easy. This is a pretty old school JRPG, and what's interesting about it, as a Capcom game, you can literally hear Capcom authentic sound effects in this straight out of Street Fighter in some cases. So if you're a huge Capcom fan, you really owe it to yourself to check this out because you can just see Capcom all over this. Now, at first, I was slightly worried about Ryu, the main character, being just a little boy throughout the whole game because I wasn't sure of the story, but it turns out it actually goes throughout the course of years and he grows up and evolves, so he visually changes as a character, so it's very interesting. So to actually start off as a 10-year-old boy and you grow up throughout the course of the story, it's actually pretty cool. You don't see that all the time. So like I said with the difficulty, it's pretty old school and it's rather difficult, but you just need to take your time grinding and leveling up your characters. And it is one of those games where when you don't know what to do and you make the wrong choices of attacks to the wrong enemies, it can make the game seem very difficult. But if you know what to do, you can actually make it rather easy. So knowledge is power in this case. Because you can have an enemy that's going to wipe out your team and it's going to seem really difficult, but if you know their weakness, they literally become helpless against you. So you just need to know what to do. And the story really did grab me, and I care about the characters. Very colorful world, a living, breathing world for its time. I really enjoyed checking this out, and it made me want to go back and start with Breath of Fire 1 and 2 on the Super Nintendo and just go ahead and start playing them in order, because I can tell this is a really solid franchise. It's popular for a reason. The only way I have it is physically. I don't have it through the PlayStation Store, and it doesn't seem to be listed anymore. So if you can get a hold of it any way you can, I highly recommend it. It's a classic JRPG on the PlayStation. And the next title is going to be Driver, released for the PlayStation 1 in 1999. I'll never forget how this blew my socks off as a kid. I played this when it first came out. I've always loved this game. And yes, Grand Theft Auto did exist at that time, but let's be real, that game had a completely different feel to it up until they came out with Grand Theft Auto 3 later on the PlayStation 2. So there was nothing like this at the time. Driver is a hugely influential game, which was clearly inspired from films such as The French Connection, because the car chase scenes in that movie are legendary, and this game was clearly inspired by them. It really captures that grittiness from it. Also, the feeling of realism. There's quite a bit of weight in the game, as in there's a lot of physics going on, which was pretty advanced for the time. And while that makes it challenging, it doesn't mean it has bad controls. It's not quite as physics-based as something obviously like Grand Theft Auto 4 because, well, we didn't have physics like that at the time, but for its time, it did feel very realistic and weighty. While there's lots of things to do in the game, we have to address the infamous garage tutorial scene. You have to do this in order to progress to the main missions, and yeah, it's pretty painful at times, but do yourself a favor, pull up some YouTube videos of how to do it. Once you see it done and you're able to do it yourself, it makes it a little bit easier, and once you get past it, you're done. So yeah, that's always been an aspect of the game that, if it were nowadays, would have gotten an update, but that's just what it was at the time. And the game is not easy in general. It's a very challenging game. Very challenging missions with strict times, strict requirements, and you have to figure them out, but it's very rewarding. And here's the beautiful thing about Driver. If you have a crazy mission, you had crazy moments and high-flying chase scenes and cop cars coming after you and everything flying and moving around, and it's over, you get to save and relive the entire experience over again in the director mode, where you can actually customize the camera angles in various fashions and various options. You literally get to direct the car chases that you just accomplished. And it's really well done. It's extremely ambitious what they did here. They really didn't even have to do this, but they did this as an homage to the likes of French Connection and film buffs, where you can direct your own scenes with all the different camera angles and options. It's really awesome. Or you can select the automatic director option. When you select this option, you get random camera angles all throughout the replay, and it actually does a decent job of giving you a variety of camera angles, looking like you almost did it yourself. And there are even pre-made car chases that were directed by the developers that are really cool. So if you want to have an idea of how epic it can be, check out those. Also from the offset of the game, you can just simply go driving and drive around these sandbox, rather large maps of Miami, San Francisco, New York, and so on. And at the time, this felt open world and highly detailed. Now, yeah, you can't get out of your car and explore the environment. It's a driving game, but man, it was super ambitious at the time. It's really impressive even by today. So at the time, this was truly mind-blowing. It felt like a living, breathing world that you're driving around in. Yeah, there's the draw distance limitations, yeah, and all that, but honestly, it runs quite well. That's why they did that. Now, is Driver perfect? Not necessarily. It can be pretty frustrating at times and rather difficult, but it's worth it. The game is epic. So if you want that French Connection 1970s gritty car chase feel, Driver is one of the best to ever do it. And it is rather cheap to get a hold of, thankfully. It's not a particularly expensive game, and hopefully they bring it to PlayStation 5's classic library. So Driver, you should check it out. And the final game on our list is going to be Koudelka, released for the PlayStation 1 in 2000. For those that may not be aware, Koudelka is actually the first in the Shadow Hearts franchise that was all on PlayStation 2. So if you're a fan of that franchise, you absolutely need to check this out if possible, which unfortunately isn't easy. This is by far the most expensive game on the list. I was fortunate that I got it years ago for like $50. And this is actually my first time firing it up. I never got around to playing it. I remember reading reviews for it back in the day, and one of the original critiques of the game is that it's punishingly difficult. And honestly, I didn't think it was that bad. As long as you pay attention to what you're doing and you level up properly, it's really not that bad in terms of difficulty. You just got to pace yourself. Although I did find the destructible weapons to be a little bit annoying. They randomly break on you, so don't get too attached to a weapon even when it's really good. The graphics and atmosphere and music are absolutely top notch here. I was really pleasantly surprised by them. The pre-rendered backgrounds look fantastic, the character models look good, and they're very well animated, and the battle system is really well put together, although a bit slower paced. And like I said, with the atmosphere, it's absolutely excellent. The music is top notch. For the time, the voice acting is actually quite good. The characters are interesting. I was really pulled in with the story and the gameplay. It really does feel like a hybrid of Resident Evil and JRPGs with the way you run around in these really awesome pre-rendered environments. Although it can be a bit tough to see items laying around and secret spots, so you really need to search everything thoroughly. So this takes place in a fictional cathedral in Wales in 1889, 15 years before the events of Shadow Hearts. I covered Shadow Hearts in a previous video for PlayStation 2 if you want to check that out. Link is in the description. The combat system of this is actually quite good, although slower and pretty tough, but it is interesting, and the way you customize your characters is pretty unique. Each time you level up each stat any way you like. Every weapon and every item you equip drastically alter your stats. So really what weapon and item you have equipped really does change your build dramatically. So you really want to pay attention to what you're doing. And if you have an element that is in line with an enemy, you'll actually heal the enemy versus hurting them, and vice versa. If it's the opposite, it'll dramatically damage them. Also in the battles, it's on a grid system, so you actually move your character around as well as perform actions. So it's not just a stand-in-place turn-based RPG. There's additional strategies to it. So once you get used to the combat and you understand its ins and outs, it gets easier and it's quite interesting. But you do have to adopt it because it's not like your typical JRPG. But what was really grabbing me were the pre-rendered backgrounds, atmosphere, and characters. So this game is quite fascinating. So the reviews back in the day were mostly positive, sort of mixed, like 7s and 8s at best. This is one of those older games I think is aging like fine wine. The themes in it, the setting, the atmosphere, I'm just really impressed by this game. In fact, it's blown me away, better than I anticipated it would be. So Koudelka, if you're a fan of Shadow Hearts or just a fan of JRPGs, you want something that's interesting or challenging, you cannot go wrong with Koudelka. Unfortunately, it is expensive and hard to get a hold of, so hopefully they'll bring it to PlayStation 5 in some sort of way, as well as the rest of the Shadow Hearts series. That would be incredible. Speaking of PlayStation 5, if you want to check out some PlayStation 5 exclusives that run great on the PlayStation 5 Pro, check out the video on your screen. You'll really enjoy it. God bless and have a wonderful day.